a kind of lack of insight. And then this lack of insight, it results from hubris in the words of Aristotle, and excessive arrogance, that may be the different words you can use, right? Then during the course of the tragedy, the hero moves from blindness to insight, and Aristotle calls it anagnorisis, and in the modern sense, you can call it epiphany. Epiphany. During the course of the tragedy, the tragic hero moves from blindness to insight, means he comes to know about the reality, he faces the bitter truth, and this Aristotle calls anagnorisis, and in the modern language, it can be epiphany. Then, since tragedy is an imitation of a serious action, it should be written in a dignified style. It should be written in a dignified style. And finally, the aim of a tragedy must be cathartic, means it should arouse the feelings of pity and fear, means it should be a tool in purging, in purifying, in clarifying the emotions of the spectators. That is catharsis, and this is done through the arousal of the feelings of pity and fear. You can apply it on any tragic hero. It may be Dr. Faustus, it may be Macbeth, it may be Othello, it may be King Lear, and it may be Macbeth. So now try to understand why I am talking about all these things. See, I'm talking about the concept of tragedy, I'm talking about the concept of the tragic hero. So here we see that different elements combining together, they give meaning to the definition of tragedy and the definition of a tragic hero. Now, which are the elements? We have seen hubris is there, tragic flow is there, anagnorisis is there. So these elements, all these elements combining together, they provide totality to the meaning of tragedy, and to the concept of the tragic hero. So it simply means, uh, if you talk about formalism, it simply means that every work of art, it is a kind of organic unity. Every work of art, this is a kind of organic unity. And different elements combining together, they basically give totality to any concept. I hope you are getting the point. I repeat again, this approach, it assumes that a work of literary art, it is an organic unity, and in this organic unity every element contributes to the total meaning of the work. Say for example, as I have talked about the definition of tragedy and the tragic hero, so here we have seen that different elements like tragic flow is there, anagnorisis is there, hubris is there. So all these elements, combining together, they provide total meaning to the definition of tragedy and the definition of tragic hero. So again, you know, in tragedy, all the elements, they go together. How? In order to produce a formal unity. So this is the essence of formalistic approach. Again, I'm simplifying it. See, if you talk about formalism, you just can say that it is an objective theory of art. It is an objective theory of art, and it basically examines how different elements, say for example, plot, characterization, dialogue, style, structure, imagery, tone, and genre. So, how all these elements contribute to the theme or unity of any kind of literary work. I hope you are getting my point. What I'm trying to say is that though the approach has been given by some modern critics, but it is as old as literary criticism in itself, and it is as I mean it. You can find its roots in poetics, where Aristotle talks about the form of tragedy, where he talks about the definition or the concept of a tragic hero. So there we have seen that different elements combining together, they provide a kind of formal unity to any work. So that is the essence of formalism. I have already told you that the title is formalism. So naturally it must be related to the form. Now, in any work, be it a novel, or be it a short story, or be it a drama, or be it a poem, in every literary work, you can find style, you can find structure, you can find imagery, you can find tone, you can find genre, you can find characterization and plot and dialogue and style. So all these elements combining together, they give a kind of formal unity to that particular work. I mean, they give meaning, or they play a part in providing totality to that particular work of art. So this is basically the essence of formalism. I hope it is clear to all of you.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
So the fact is there is
Yes, sir.
nothing so the fact is that there is nothing new in it, right? And we also talk about psychoanalysis. Again, psychoanalysis, this is a theory that has been inaugurated by Sigmund Freud. But once again, we can find its roots in literary criticism, or we can find its roots in old literature, right? Say for example, when you talk about catharsis, and you know what catharsis is, that simply means purgation, purification, and clarification. And how it is done? It is done through the arousal of the feelings of pity and fear. See, one thing is very simple. When you see any movie, in the movie you can find some very emotional scenes where the hero weeps, or you can find any domestic scene where there is the scene of separation between the hero and the heroine, or there may be a scene between a brother and a brother regarding the domestic life. So some scenes are so emotional that we start weeping, or tears start rolling down from our eyes. Now the fact is that we know that this is not the reality, this is the fake representation on the screen. And some actors are participating in a movie, and then they have represented something on the silver screen. So we know the reality, even then we start weeping. And we all believe in hero worship, that is human nature. So you may have your own heroes, you may have your own heroines. So in any movie, it happens that sometimes the hero beats the villain, and sometimes the hero is beaten by the villain. So when the hero beats the villain, you become very happy, you start jumping, you become overjoyed. But suddenly, when the hero is being beaten by the villain, you start, weeping, or you become very sad. Why? That is psychological, no? Because you try to identify your emotions with that particular hero who is participating or who is playing his role in the movie. So, don't you feel that this is the form of psychoanalysis? At the same time, when you talk about the arousal of the feelings of pity and fear, pity we feel for someone who suffers undeservedly. And this pity turns into fear when we feel, or when we try to identify ourselves with that person who is in suffering. Let me apply it on Dr. Faustus. I hope you all You all are familiar with the tragedy of Dr. Faustus. See, in the last scene of Dr. Faustus, for 24 years he enjoyed every kind of power. And when 24 years are going to be over, just 1 hour is left, he develops a desire to offer his apologies before the God. But now it is too late for him. Now he wishes to live, but life is not for him because the contract is going to be over. Now this time, he becomes very pathetic. And if you remember, when just half an hour is left, he turns to God, he turns to Jesus Christ, he turns to all the objects of nature. And he says, "Oh God, I just want to live. I'll burn all my books. I'll never sound the name of Satan. I'll come to your shelter. Please, please save me from this evil." And then he turns to Jesus Christ and says, "Oh Christ, you shed your blood to save this humanity. Please give just one drop of blood to save me." Then he turns to earth, he turns to sky, he turns to all the objects of nature in order to have help from them. But no help is there. Now, think for a minute that you are reading this last scene or you are watching it on the silver screen. Now, seeing Dr. Faustus in this pathetic situation, I feel that you will feel pity for him. And the very next moment, this pity will turn into fear. Why? Because you will start feeling that if you follow the footsteps of Dr. Faustus, you will also be in the same situation in which Dr. Faustus is in the end of this play. So, what happens in this way? Your feelings are purged, your feelings are purified and clarified, and you take an oath not to follow the footsteps of Dr. Faustus. That simply means you make up your mind not to reveal the secrets of nature as Dr. Faustus did. He tried to overcome death with the help of black magic. So when you see the end of Dr. Faustus, then you make a promise not to follow the footsteps of Dr. Faustus. So you are reading it on the pages basically, or you may see it in the form of a performance, and it basically moves you. So this is something psychological. What I'm trying to say is that psychoanalysis, again, this is not a new approach. It is as old as literary criticism. So when Aristotle talks about the theory of catharsis, when he talks about the arousal of the feelings of pity and fear, it means directly or indirectly he is in a process of psycholizing something or other thing. In the same way, when you talk about primary imagination and secondary imagination, these are also the forms of psychoanalysis. So, psychoanalysis, again, the approach has been given by Sigmund Freud, but it is as old as literary criticism in itself. In the same way, this approach, formalism, though it was inaugurated during the 20th century, but again it is as old as literary criticism in itself. I hope you have got the point.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So the essence of
Yes, sir.
formalism is that it talks about form, and it puts emphasis on the fact that in every literary work there are certain elements like style, structure, imagery, tone, and dialogues. So all these elements combining together, they provide formal unity to any work of art. Or any work of art is a kind of organic unity where different elements, they contribute in giving meaning to that literary work. So that is the essence of formalism. Now let us go ahead. See, if you talk about formalism as a modern literary theory, you will find that this is a modern approach which has been spearheaded by two main bodies. Number one, the Russian school of formalism, and number two, new criticism. Now, both the bodies, the Russian school of formalism and new criticism, both the bodies basically try to investigate a text or to understand a text through the text only. Now, there are two ways of understanding and analyzing a text. Say, for example, you can take the example of Hamlet or Macbeth. If you want to understand the play Macbeth, so you can understand it in two ways. Number one, you can read the text, in the light of the Elizabethan age. I mean, the age when it was produced. You can read it in the light of the biography of William Shakespeare, and you can read it in the light of, the socio-political and historical conditions of the time of William Shakespeare. So this is the first approach, and that is the traditional approach. Now, formalism says that while understanding any text, we don't have to take into consideration the biography of the author, the historical milieu in which the book has been written, or the socio-political conditions of the time of the author or the time when the book has been written. The text is everything. So, whatever meaning we have to find out in a text, we need to find it out on the basis of the reading of the text only. The author is dead. When you analyze any text through the lens of formalism, it simply means you don't have to go beyond the text. The author is dead. The text is everything. The text has certain literary elements and some linguistic features, some linguistic characteristics on the basis of which you can understand and analyze and examine a text. Right? So I repeat again, formalism, the approach was basically spearheaded by two main bodies. Number one, the Russian school of formalism, and number two, new criticism. And both the schools basically, they both tried to understand a text through the text only. And that's why this approach, it basically posed a shift from traditional approaches. Because what happened in the traditional approaches, the biography of the author was investigated, the historical milieu, the socio-political conditions of the time of the author, everything was investigated in order to understand the text. But the Russian school of formalism and new criticism, both the schools, they try to understand a text through the text only. They do not take into consideration the biography of the author, the time of the author, the socio-political conditions of the author, or the historical circumstances of the time of the author. And that's why both the schools posed a shift from traditional approaches. Now try to understand what is, Russian school of formalism. So first we'll talk about the Russian school of formalism, and then we'll talk about new criticism. See, this is very simple and interesting also. Just listen to me carefully. I'll try to simplify each and everything. I hope I'm clearly audible to all of you.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, okay. So first let us talk
Yes, sir.
about, okay, first let us talk about this Russian school of formalism. See, this Russian school of formalism, it basically emerged from the discussions, meetings, and publications of the OPOJAZ and MLC, Moscow Linguistic Circle. I repeat again, the Russian school of formalism, it basically emerged from the discussions, meetings, and publications of the OPOJAZ, OPOJAZ, and the MLC, means Moscow Linguistic Circle. Right? Now, what is this opojaz? See, this opojaz, it is basically a literary society for the study of poetic language. Opojaz, it is a literary society for the study of poetic language. And it came into entity in 1914 and it dissolved into air in 1923, and it's basically based on St. Petersburg. I mean, it originated in St. Petersburg. So I repeat, Opojaz is a literary society for the study of poetic language, and it is based on St. Petersburg. And chief figures in Opojaz are Victor Slavsky and Boris Eichenbaum. Victor Slavsky, though there are so many, but I'm naming just two: Victor Slavsky and Boris Eichenbaum. Right? Then Moscow Linguistic Circle. It came into entity 1915 and it dissolved into air in 1930. And later it came to be called Prague Linguistic Circle because it was suppressed. The movement was suppressed by the Russian government in 1930. I hope you know about it. So this Moscow Linguistic Circle, later it came to be known as Prague Linguistic Circle because in 1930, this movement was suppressed by the Soviet government in 1930. So here, the chief figure is, Roman Jacobson. Now both the Opojaz and the Moscow Linguistic Circle, both these schools, they were dissatisfied with the ways of reading and studying literature in the academic fields. And what were the ways? The ways were traditional. And that's why they revolted against these ways. And then they started, these, you just can say, new schools. Right? So we are talking about the Russian school of formalism. And here I'm telling you that the Russian school of formalism, it basically emerged from the meetings, discussions, and publications of the Opojaz and the Moscow Linguistic Circle. And I have already told you that this Opojaz, it is a literary society for the study of poetic language. And in it, the chief figures are Viktor Slavsky and Boris Eichenbaum. Then Moscow Linguistic Circle, it came into entity in 1915 and it dissolved into air in 1930 when it was suppressed by the Soviet government, and that's why later it came to be called Prague Linguistic Circle. Right? Now try to understand what the Russian formalists do. See, if you try to have a look at the Russian formalism or at the Russian formalists, uh, you will come to know that the Russian formalists, how do they work basically, try to understand. See, they basically try to investigate how language works in literature and how literary texts and literary traditions function as a system. Now, first try to understand. In literature, the medium is what? Language. In day-to-day language also the medium is what? Language. So while talking about formalism, we basically have to know about what is literariness or what turns the day-to-day language into literary language, or what is the difference between day-to-day conversation and literary conversation. Say for example, the moment we get up from our bed up to the moment we again go back to our bed at the time of night, we remain busy in conversation with our friends, teachers, relatives, so many people. Now the fact is that whatever we whatever conversation we make during the day, is it literary, or can it be termed literary? If not, then what can turn this conversation into literary conversation? What can turn the day-to-day language into literary language? See, day-to-day language is different, that you use with your friends, with your parents, with your classmates, with your relatives, and with so many people you encounter during the course of the day, right? So this is the basic concern for the formalist critics. So again, I'm telling you that the medium, be it literature or be it common writing. Common writing, it may be a diary, it may be a news article, it may be anything. So everywhere, medium is what? Language. So language is everywhere. Even silence has a kind of language, right? So what these, Russian formalists try to do. See, they try to investigate how language works in literature and how literary texts and literary traditions function as a system. In every text, you can find some, literary traditions, some devices, like irony may be there, paradox may be there, hyperbole may be there, parallelism may be there. So many devices, may work in any book. So the main concern of the Russian school of formalism is they basically try to investigate how language works in literature and how literary texts and literary traditions function as a system. Now, this is known as poetics. Roman Jacobson, he calls it poetics. Right now, what is poetics? Now, poetics is something, which basically gives an answer to the question what turns the day to day language into literary language, or what turns the day to day communication into literary communication. Right? So, this you can understand with the help of a statement which has been given by J.L. Austin. J.L. Austin. Is there anyone who remembers this statement? I mean, with the help of this statement, he has tried to present a difference between day to day language and literary language, between day to day conversation and literary conversation. Anyone who remembers this statement?
So actually, I don't remember the statement exactly, but I can remember that he has talked about speech act theory.
Which theory?
Speech act theory.
Okay, see, he tries to clarify it with the help of a statement which is given in all the churches at the time of marriage. If you ever go to any church, specifically at the time of marriage, so there at the time of marriage, you can hear a father saying, uh, now, now I declare you man and wife. First, he performs so many rituals like on the name of God, His Son, and the Holy Spirits, I declare you this one and that one. You will take care of her, you will take care of him. And finally, he says, now I declare you man and wife. So you can hear this statement in all the churches at the time of marriage because this is a tradition in all the churches. Fine. You can find a father in all the churches, and the father plays an instrumental role in performing the marriage of a husband and a wife, a boy and a girl. And basically, he declares by saying, now I'm just quoting the words of, all the fathers. Now I declare you man and wife. Now the question is, do you feel that this statement is a literary statement? Do you feel that it has literary value? Yes, speak something. I'm teaching to the walls, to the sky, to the trees.
It's not in the statement.
No, no, sir, we are here.
But you are, I mean, just the bodies there, just the bodies are there.
So
Where
if
is
we are
the mental
The
approach?
also
so,
mentally present here.
so if we are talking about the
Why
statement,
don't you?
if we are talking about the statement that now I pronounce you husband and wife, we won't find much literary like devices in that. But if we are talking about the whole speech, we might find one or two things. But won't consider it a literary text.
So I think it's not about any poetic device in the sentence, but it's about the way it is said.
Sir, it is literary because I think it's a metaphorical means when she said that you are husband and wife after so many rituals, and so it is now it is a language that they are declared that they are husband and wife.
See,
Now they are declared.
the question is very simple. The father says, I mean, he gives this statement. I quote, now I declare you man and wife. So my question is, do you find any literary value in this statement?
No, sir.
Yes, no.
No, sir.
No, sir.
It basically has some traditional value. It may have some
Yes.
religious value because this is a tradition in Christianity or in the Western world. So it is a part of their religion. It is a part of their tradition. So it may have some traditional value. It may have some religious value, but it does not have literary value. See, if the same statement takes place in any work of art, say for example in any novel, in any short story, or in any drama, there it will assume literary value. Why? Because there this statement would be playing a crucial role in the development of the plot, characters, and some other things. So there it would assume literary value. But here in the church or in all the churches where this statement is given by different fathers at the time of different marriages, you know, here it has only traditional value. It has only religious value, not literary value. What I'm trying to say is that this is a very cryptic question. What is the difference between day-to-day language and literary language? Or what turns the day-to-day language into literary language? Or what turns the day-to-day conversation into literary conversation? So this is not only cryptic, but this is Delphic also. Right? Anyways, we'll try to understand how day-to-day language is different from literary language. See, and that has been a concern that has been a major concern for the formalist critics, right? So I began with the point that the Russian formalists, they try understand or they try to investigate how language works in literature and how literary texts and literary traditions function as a system. Now, this Roman Jacobson calls as poetics. Now, what is poetics? Now, poetics is an answer to the question what turns the day to day language into literary language, or what turns the day to day conversation into literary conversation. So, there have been so many attempts to differentiate day to day language with literary language, and I have given you one example quoted by J.L. Austin, right? Now, Roman Jacobson says that literature is possessed of certain literary elements and some linguistic features, and these literary elements or linguistic features, they provide a kind of specificity to a work of art. Now, Russian formalists, they try to isolate this specificity and they term it literariness. They call it literariness or literature nost. So there is something specific in any work of art. Every work of art is possessed of certain, literary elements, like so many devices, and it is also possessed of certain linguistic features which provide a kind of specificity to any work of art. So these formalist critics, they try to isolate this specificity, and they term it as literariness or literature nost. Literariness or literature nost. Right? Now, Victor Slavsky, he basically tries to make a difference between poetical language and practical language. Poetical language and practical language. Now, according to him, poetical language is non-casual and purposeful. Poetical language is non-casual and purposeful. And on the other hand, practical language is casual, or you just can say that it is a casual verbal structure, and this is employed in day-to-day language, or this is applied in day-to-day tasks, or daily routine of tasks. So I repeat again, Victor Slavsky says that poetical language, that is basically non-casual and purposeful, because the language of poetry has a purpose. It may be a social purpose, it may be a political purpose, it may be moral, or it may be anything. On the other hand, practical language, that is a casual verbal structure. And this casual verbal structure, this is employed in the language of, day-to-day speeches. Day-to-day speeches, or, daily routine of, speeches, right? Now again, I'm coming to the point, literary language and day-to-day language. See, Victor Slavsky says that poeticity, not Victor Slavsky, Roman Jacobson. Let us try to understand what is this poeticity, or what is this literariness, or what is this literature nost, or what is this that turns the day-to-day language into literary language. So Roman Jacobson says that this poeticity, or what you call literariness, this is like oil in cooking. Using mostly females basically, so you can understand it better. I'm not saying that the males can't understand it. Since most of the females are good cooks, so they can understand it in a better way. See, when you prepare any dish, so you use oil, and then in the oil you use spices, vegetable, and so many things. Now my question is, if you use only oil in your pan, can it be delicious? I mean, can you eat the oil after cooking it?
No, sir.
No, sir.
No, sir. No,
No,
sir.
Who
sir.
said
No,
yes?
sir.
Someone said yes. कौन है भाई तेल खाता है जो? Again, try to understand. When we cook any dish, कोई भी सब्जी हो, तो we use oil,
Yes,
okay,
sir.
then jeera, spices, and then vegetable जो छोंक लगता है. Now the question is, can you have the oil on itself only? I mean, can you cook the oil only in the pan, and you eat it, or you
No,
drink
sir. We
it?
No,
have
No,
to
sir.
sir.
put.
No, sir.
No, sir. We have to put spices and
Right.
vegetables also.
Now listen to me. Then you put the oil aside, and you take all the vegetables and you cook them. Okay, it will be a dish, but in the
No,
absence
sir.
of oil, it will not be tasty. Right? So what the oil is doing, the oil is providing a kind of taste. Now I have simplified the fact. Poeticity is like oil in cooking. The moment you use oil in cooking, the dish becomes very, very tasty. It becomes very, very delicious. And if you cook any vegetable without using oil, though it will be a dish, but I think it will not be that much tasty as you can make with the help of or by using oil, right? In the same way, day-to-day language and literary language. Day-to-day language is simple language. This is the language of information. This is the language of communication. But literary language, this is not only language, but this is language plus. Now, what is this plus? This plus is literariness. This plus is oil. Some disturbance is there, please. Now it's clear. So, you know, in day-to-day conversation, there is the use of language. In literary language, again, there is language. But day-to-day language, this is the language of communication only. This is the language of information only. Through which we get information, we give information. But literary language, this is not only language, but this is language plus. So this plus factor is adding a kind of taste to language. What the oil is doing in the dish, the same thing, this plus factor is doing in language. As you cannot have a tasty dish in the absence of oil, in the same way you cannot have tasty language or you cannot have literary language without using this plus factor. So this plus factor is adding something different to language, that is literariness. In the same way, oil is adding some taste to the common vegetable or to the vegetable. I hope you are getting my point, right? So poeticity, this is like oil in cooking. And as I have told you that you cannot have it on its own. But when it is used with other food, then it is more than a mere addition. Why? Because it changes the taste of the food. It changes the taste of the food. Is that clear? So this literariness, it changes the taste of the language. Simple language and literary language. So what oil is doing in a dish, this literariness is doing in a language. The oil adds, something tasty to the dish. In the same way, this literariness, it is also adding something different to language. I mean, it is turning language into tasty. It is turning language into meaningful. It is turning language into fecund. You just can say fecund language, right? So ordinary language, it communicates a message or information. How? By referring to an external world outside of language, right? And literary language, on the other hand, it is self-focused. Literary language is self-focused. And the function of poetic language is not to make extrinsic references, but, to draw the attention of the readers, to draw the attention of, different, you just can say people. Is that clear? Now, you can understand it with the help of one more device, which is very particular in, you just can say, Russian school of formalism, and that is defamiliarization. I hope you are familiar with the process of defamiliarization.
Yes, sir.
Victor Slavsky,
Yes, sir.
yeah, Victor Slavsky said that
Yes, sir.
art defamiliarizes things. That simply means that it turns the known into strange. It turns something known into strange. Now, let me clarify it with the help of, one example. See, I am giving you two activities to ponder on or to examine: walking and dancing, right? So, what is the difference between walking and dancing? Okay, I'm trying to
We
I'm
can
trying to, Okay, let me clarify. See, think for a minute that some of you live in the hostel, or all of you live in the hostel of the university. That is hardly 500 meters away from the department, and daily you go to the department in order to attend the classes, right? So when you come out of your room, then you come outside the hostel and you move towards the department by walking. So do you remain conscious of this activity that now you are moving on your feet and you are going towards the department?
No, sir.
No, sir.
Why? Why?
Because we are familiar to this. We are
Right.
used to this,
Because,
no?
yeah,
We
there are
unconscious.
some activities which have yes, yes. There are certain activities which have become, habitual to you, or for which you have become habitual, or which come to you automatically and spontaneously. Say, for example, if you are eating at the time of night and suddenly the light is off and there is utter darkness, so do you feel that your hand with muscle, will it go to the side of the ear, or to the back side, or to your head? No.
No, sir.
Even in the utter darkness, your hand would go towards your mouth. Am I right or not?
Yes,
Why?
sir.
Yes, sir.
Right,
You are
sir.
right.
Because
It's habitual.
no, because this is a kind of activity which now comes to you automatically and you have become habitual for it, right? And suppose if you go to your department by walking and you do this activity daily, so when you come out of your room, you come out of the hostel and then you move towards your department, I I feel, I'm very sure of the fact that you must not be conscious of this fact that now you are moving on your feet and you are walking towards the department, because now this is a kind of activity which comes to you automatically and you have become habitual of it, right? So suddenly you start dancing. So I think now you will become aware of this activity. While dancing, you will be aware of the fact that your bodily movements, they should not look vulgar to others. There should be a balance in your bodily movements. So now walk and dance. See, dance is also a walk. But when you walk, you remain unconscious. But when you start dancing, you become conscious. So dance is also a walk, but this time this walk is felt. In the same way, day-to-day language is only language, but literary language is language which is basically felt. Day-to-day language is a kind of language which is basically felt. I hope you are getting my point.
Yes, sir.
Yes,
So
sir.
there is not much
Yes,
difference
sir.
between
Yes,
the two
sir.
activities. One is the task of walking, and the other is the task of dancing, right? So when we walk, we basically seek to be aware of it, because now this is a kind of activity for which we have become habitual and which now comes to us automatically, spontaneously, naturally. But when we start dancing, fine. Now, we become conscious of our bodily movements, of our hand movements, and we become conscious of the fact that now activities or bodily movements, they should not look vulgar or obscene, to others. Is that clear? In the same way, everyday use of language, this is something that is natural or unconscious. Everyday use of language, this is something which is natural or unconscious. It comes to us automatically, naturally, and unconsciously. But language in poetry, it is more or less the same language that we know, that we use in our day-to-day conversation. But this time, we become more aware of its presence. As I'm talking about walking and dancing. Dance is also a walk, but when we start dancing, we become more aware of its presence. So dance is also a walk, but this time it is felt. In the same way, literary language is more or less the same language that we know, that we use in our day to day conversation, in our daily routine of life. But this time, we basically become more aware of its presence. Or you just can say that this is a kind of new sensation to be felt, and this is a kind of new sensation, that we feel at the time of dancing or dancing. So that is basically, you just can say, defamiliarization. Is that clear? Defamiliarization. That simply means, something known is turned into strange, right? So Victor Slavsky says that art basically defamiliarizes those things that have become habitual or automatic to us. Art defamiliarizes those things, which have become, for which we have become habitual or which come to us automatically. I hope you are getting the point. So this is what makes a text literary, right? And this is what turns the day-to-day conversation into literary conversation, right? And basically, if you talk it in the words of Eichenbaum, he basically says that literature basically it constitutes differences from other orders of facts. It basically provides, or you just can say constitutes differences from orders of facts. Is that clear? So the object of study of literary study, that is not an object, but a set of differences. I hope you are getting my point. The main purpose of the study of literature or literary art or any literary text, this is not an object, but this is a set of differences. Is that clear? So literary studies, they basically, or all the literary texts, they basically analyze the differences implied in the opposition between, practical and poetical language. I hope you are getting the point. So what is the difference
Yes, sir.
between walking and
Sir,
dancing?
could you please repeat this last point? I got a little confused here.
See, the basic point is that the object of literature is not to study something, something from one particular point of view. So the basic aim of literature is, to know about the differences, to read the differences. Say, for example, we have come to know about the difference between, dancing and walking. At the same time, we have come to know about the difference between the literary language and the non-literary language. Getting my point? So this is basically given by Boris Eichenbaum. I repeat it. He basically says that literature, it basically constitutes differences from other orders of facts. What is there in literature? In literature, you can find differences. Things are not simple there. There you have to find out meaning. And how can you find out meaning? You can find out meaning on the basis of different literary devices which are used, in literature, right? So you just can say that the object of study of literary art, that is not an object only. Say, for example, now I'm simplifying it. Suppose you have to write a poem on any urn, or suppose you have to write any poem on the sky, you have to write any poem on anything. So your subject matter would be, that object only. No, you'll be finding how this object is different from other objects. You'll be finding how other objects may look or may not look like this particular object. So differences there you have to find out. Simply reading is not there. Again, I'm more simplifying it. Herein lies the difference between the scientific reading and literary reading. Say, for example, you take a scientist and a creative person to some park where, different blades of grass are growing. So to the scientific person, one blade of grass is like other blade of grass. But to someone who is creative, who is from literature, this grass may be a symbol of democracy, right? In the same way, you give a rose bud to a scientific person, he will simply say that this is a bud of rose. The petals are red, this time it is green, and this green color is due to chlorophyll, and this red color is due to this fact. It has this thing and that thing and that thing, right? But a person from literary bent of mind would analyze it differently. He or she can write pages on it, right? So the purpose of literary art, that is not to study an object only, but a set of differences. And if you go through the set of differences, if you analyze the set of differences, only then you can find out the real meaning. So that is the basic, idea which has been given by, uh, you can say, Boris Eichenbaum. I hope it is clear to you.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes,
So,
sir.
Yes, sir.
so should I move further?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Okay. So I have given you what is the nub of formalism, and here we have come to know that formalism is related to the form of any work of art, and it is an objective theory of art where different elements combining together give totality to the meaning of any work of art. Different elements combining together. Now you cannot study one work of art without one element. All the elements, or you just can say each element contributes in giving totality to the meaning of that work of art. Every work of art is a kind of organic unity, right? Then I told you that the major concern of Russian school of formalists is how language works in literature and how literary texts and literary traditions function as a system, right? Then they basically talk about literariness, or what is the difference between day-to-day language and literary language, or what turns the day-to-day language into literary language. So it's a controversial thing, and still, they have tried to isolate, I mean, the formalists, they have tried to isolate this specificity under the name literariness or literature nost, or you just can say poeticity, right? Then I have told you that poeticity is like oil in cooking. This literariness is like oil in cooking. So this poeticity, it provides taste to common language, as oil gives taste to any kind of dish. In the same way, this literariness, it gives taste to common language. And that's why, great literature is simply charged with meaning up to the utmost possible degree. The moment you charge language with meaning, it becomes literary language. Otherwise, it is simple language. Someone can ask you, how old are you? If you are if you are someone not related to literature, you can say I'm 30 year old, or I'm 40 year old, or whatever. I mean, it's up to you. But someone who is from literature and who is having literary sensibility can say, I have seen 30 springs of my life. Someone can say, I have seen, I have passed 30 autumns of my life. So here also you can come to know about the nature of those persons. One who is using the word spring, and the other who is using the word autumn. So one who is using the word spring is somehow happy in his or her life, and someone who is using the word autumn is not that much happy. So that is the literary answer basically, right? So it basically depends on the user, right? See, language is very, very crucial. So while using a language, you need to be very careful. It can make you, it can destroy you, it can kill you. It can work like healing balm on your bruised bosom. And it can be miraculous for you. It can provide life to you specifically when you are going to die, specifically when you are surrounded by so many ill thoughts where you can even contemplate on committing suicide. So language is very miraculous. The words are very miraculous. So whenever you use the words, you need to be very, very careful, right? And in language, this is the play on the verse. This is the use of verse. Be it your meeting with your friends, with your parents, with your teachers, uh, when you appear for any interview, right?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Then we talked about defamiliarization. That is a very crucial point in the Russian school of formalism. Now, there are certain devices which are used in poetry, in play, and in some other genres, and these are very crucial from the viewpoint of the Russian school of formalists. And these devices are irony, paradoxes, parallelism, iambic pentameter. Then there are two, you just can say two poles which serve as a background to this Russian school of formalism, and that is intentional fallacy, and the other is effective fallacy, right? And there are two more points, which are very crucial for the Russian school of formalism. And what did I talk about a minute before? Intentional fallacy and affective fallacy, right?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
And then fabula and suj. Fabula, 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 and suj, Syuzhet. These are two more devices which are used or which have been talked about by the Russian school of formalism. So these I don't feel I can cover within the next 20 minutes. I need one complete lecture because I'll be clarifying all the devices with the help of certain examples from the text. I feel it's enough for today. If you have some queries, please let me know. Okay, tell me very
No,
frankly,
sir.
the essence of formalism is clear.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
If there is any question from the side of anyone, like what is the essence of formalism, so simply you have to say that it is a new approach that provides a shift from the traditional approaches, because in the traditional approaches, while analyzing any work of art, the biography of the author is taken into consideration, and the socio-political conditions, the historical circumstances of the time of the author, of the time of the book, are to be taken into consideration. But in formalism, there is nothing like that. The text is everything, and the author is dead. There is nothing beyond the text. If you want to analyze any text, you need to analyze on the basis of certain literary elements and some linguistic features which we find in all the texts. So every text is an autonomous body. There is nothing outside the text. Everything is in the text. So whatever meaning you want to find out, you need to find it out on the basis of the elements, the literary elements and the linguistic elements which all the books touches. So that is the essence of formalism. It is a linguistic phenomenon. So that is the essence of formalism. And I hope this is clear to all of you.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Yes.
sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Anything you want to know?
No, sir.
Sir,
It
one
is clear.
question. Sir, what is the basic difference between Upayas and Moscow-linguistic circle, the thought process of this school of thought?
See, these were the two contemporary bodies which emerged simultaneously. And the concern of both the bodies is somehow same. Basically, they were dissatisfied with the ways literature was studied. And how literature was studied, it was studied in the background of different, factors, like the biography of the author, the socio-political conditions of the author. So as such, there are no differences between the two. The differences are that of only the people. And the people are also, their aims are same. In a way, you just can say that when we talk about formalism, so formalism also comes out of the two bodies, the Russian school of formalism and new criticism. Now, what is the difference between Russian school of formalism and new criticism? It's a very cryptic question. So there is a very thin line. The aims of both are same, right? In fact, let me tell you, in new criticism, the word new criticism is a misnomer. Why? Because, you know, the critics that you find in new criticism, they are basically, the critics who started writing quite earlier. And this new criticism is a further extension of their literary theories or their critical theories, basically. Right? So as such, there is no difference between they are two different societies only. Say for example, the task of two parties may be one, but the names are different. So opoges, that is for the study of poetic language, and when you talk about Moscow linguistic circle, here the particular emphasis was on linguistics, basically language only. Clear?
Yes, sir.
Yes, anything else? Anything else?
So, so
No,
sir,
sir.
basically
No.
the Russian formalists they emphasize on the form, and the new critics emphasize on the content or of the text.
Sorry? Yes, 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 please.
Russian formalists they emphasize on the form,
On the form.
whereas on the form,
Okay. Okay.
whereas whereas the new critics they emphasize on the content of the text.
Where did you read it?
That is
And how
whatever
can you how can you clarify it? Can you name some new critics who focus on the content? They focus on the
yes,
content, but more than content, they basically focus on the form. Okay, which came
agreed, sir.
first? New criticism or Russian school of formalism?
It was Russian formalism that came first.
Right, absolutely right. And then new criticism. See, the only difference I think between the two is, this may be that, one focuses on the process of defamiliarization and the other does not. And if you talk about new criticism, if you remember, it was the dominant force, in England and America. Is that clear? So basically, I feel that there is nothing new in it. In fact, it is a continuation of the tradition of I. Richards, T.S. Eliot, Ezra Pound, William Emerson, and T.E. Hume. And then further, you can say that it is a further extension of their seminal ideas. Getting my point? And in a way, you can say that new criticism, it is also, you can see it as an offshoot of a literary movement that is practical criticism. And you know that it has been pioneered by I.A. Richards, right? And if you remember in France also, a similar movement, it also started and its name was what? explication the text. Explication the text means an analysis of the text of the poem, right? So you just can say that new criticism, it was a reaction to traditional humanist criticism. And what is Russian school of formalism? That is also a reaction. So somehow they are same. See, what you are saying, that is again very thin line is there between the two. But both the approaches, they basically provided a shift from the traditional approaches. And in the traditional approaches, I have already told you what happened there. But in new criticism and in Russian school of, अब भाई देखो formalism वैसे तो एक ही पढ़ते हैं ना हम. I have given you the demarcation that it has been made up of two bodies, the Russian school of formalism and new criticism. Otherwise, it should have been just one term, formalism, and everything should have been included in it. यही होता ना?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Clear or any other doubt?
Clear, sir.
When you talk about, see, when you talk about all the new approaches, be it structuralism, be it destructuralism or deconstruction, everywhere you can find such, minor differences and controversies also, little bit.
Okay, sir.
Anything else? अभी आप कहने लगो कि जैसे साइकोएनालिसिस न्यू है, मैंने बता दिया कि इट्स नॉट न्यू. Catharsis is what? That is a form of psychoanalysis. Primary imagination and secondary imagination, they are what? They are basically the very forms of, or the very form of, psychoanalysis. So when you study literature, you are directly or indirectly in a process of psycholizing literature. In every approach, you can find, something new and something old. And moreover, remember, what is written by different authors, they are not gods. So don't feel that whatever they have said is the last line. And that is very specific in the area of research methodology. You always remain confused that should you follow this edition or you should follow this edition. No. You can follow anyone. You can go for the seventh one, you can go for the eighth one, you can go for the ninth one. But with whatever edition you follow, you need to specify it. This is only drapery. The main concern should be on, on the material that you are supposed to write inside the thesis. I mean the pages that you'll be filling. You can underline the name of a book, you can italicize it. What is the difference? Moreover, one who said that it should be underlined, the other said that it should be italicized. So who can decide that first one is right or the other one is right? That is basically what we try to understand through theory. Knowledge is never fixed. It keeps changing. Getting my point? Even up to the time of John Donne, the concept was that the sun moved around the earth. You can have this idea from so many poems of John Donne. But after John Donne, the concept was, it underwent tremendous change. I mean, it became absolutely reversed. Now the concept is that the earth moves around the sun and the sun does not move around the earth. What was true 10 years back may not be true after 10 years. So knowledge is never fixed. It keeps changing. There can be no absolute truth, right? If you feel that whatever I am saying is absolutely right, so take it into consideration that it is becoming a truth after marginalizing your ideas. Are you getting my point?
Yes, sir.
Say for example, you are 30, you are 40 candidates right now. So you are saying different thing and I am saying different thing, and finally the conclusion is that you agree with me. So don't you feel that my statement would become true after marginalizing your statements?
Yes, sir.
So truth is never fixed. Knowledge keeps changing. You can have the famous example about Pluto. Anyone who knows?
Yes, sir. Earlier it was considered a planet, and then now it is not considered a planet.
So when it was considered a planet, that time it was a truth. And now when it is not considered a planet, again it is a truth. So where is the fixity of this truth? Nowhere. I hope you are getting my point.
Yes, sir.
Exactly, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes. Anything else?
Nice class, sir. Very informative.
Yes, anything else?
No, sir.
No, sir.
No, sir.
No, sir.
No, sir. Thank you.
ठीक है then. So with your permission, I can now, I feel, leave the device, right?
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir. Okay, thank you so much,
Sure,
sir.
sir.
Okay, sir.
Thank
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much.
you. Okay, bye.
Thank you very much, sir.